are all born with certain lessons given to us at birth. When you understand what your lesson is, it sort of decodes why you attract certain things in life, because it is a matrix. And once we understand what that is, we choose differently. We become conscious.
Welcome to Deeply Well, a soft place to land on your journey. A podcast for those that are curious, creative, and ready to expand in higher consciousness and self-care. I'm Devi Brown. This is where we heal. This is where we become. This episode, I have been getting so many questions about how to deepen in the journey, especially around some tools that may be up until this point a little bit unfamiliar to the greater audience. So something that we've had a chance to explore pretty in depth over the last few seasons on this show is astrology. I'm really excited today to introduce a modality that we have not spoken about on this show ever that can be life-changing, might be too small of a word, just absolutely transformative and a really powerful tool to have about yourself, to know how to best navigate this life as the unique soul that you are embodied on the earth at this time. We have a heavy hitter in the studio, someone who is celebrated and renowned for their work in numerology. So excited to welcome to the show today, Josh Siegel. Josh is recognized as one of the foremost authorities on numerology in the United States. He has brought a fresh and compelling new face to the ancient science by translating the mystical system of numbers into the modern mindset of today. By employing his highly advanced system of calculations, he is able to quickly penetrate core issues, give instant clarity to questions, interpret the meaning of seemingly random events, and empower you to change counterproductive patterns to welcome in happiness and prosperity and more. Josh, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to get this just powerful information into the hands of everyone. And I'm so excited about this time. I mean, it just has to feel kind of, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth. To me, it feels kind of amazing right now that these ancient tools that I believe Creator gave to Earth to help us understand and walk this path, that are thousands and thousands of years old, we get to learn about and apply and use as guideposts for our life right now. One of, I consider, the most complicated times in recent human history.
To say the least, yes. No doubt.
Yeah.
It's someone says, oh, well, that sounds kind of new agey. It's actually very ancient agey. Numerology, or the idea of connecting numbers to a higher meaning or a deeper meaning, go back thousands of years, pre-Christian, pre-Judaism, to an ancient time. Although both the Christians and the Jews, also littered within their holy writings, do have a mystical usage of numbers, right? So, for example, when you have like Noah was on the ark for 40 days and 40 nights, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Israelites wanted the desert for 40 years. And in the New Testament, Jesus was tempted by the devil for 40 days, right? So we see numbers being used allegorically, but the origins go back to the beginning of civilization. And my research into this, which started 25 years ago,
Wow.
I sort of approached it because I was basically raised by an academic. My mother was a professor, and she was a skeptic. Both my parents were highly educated. Well, yeah, very, very much skeptic. I always say to my mom is so skeptical, she's skeptical of skeptics. You just think they're skeptical enough, right? So I learned from her to have a discriminating mind, and research was important. But I always had this instinct that there was more to life than what I was seeing. They couldn't answer my questions. So I had to probe deeper into life's mysteries on my own, but I still used the approach of ferreting out facts and just, finding out the truth was so important to me. Something had to work, something had to be valid. And that's where numbers and the mystical, this sort of the mathematics of it, this systematic aspect connected to the mysterious was a perfect sort of intersection for me.
Mm. Josh, can
Mm.
you give us a delicious, understandable overview of what numerology is and how we can make it useful into our day-to-day life?
After 25 years of doing this, I actually believe this system, which I use, is sort of it's like a code to your life path.
Ooh.
It's the algorithm to why you're here and what you're here to learn.
Oh my gosh, I love the way you said that.
And it works, actually. And the reason why I know it works is I've been doing it for 25 years and I've done approximately 20,000 sessions.
Wow.
So I have an enormous body of research. And what I've found is that we are all born with certain lessons given to us at birth.
Mm.
This is purposeful. And when you understand what your lesson is, it sort of decodes why you attract certain things in life. Because, and it's interesting how it dovetails a little bit with modern psychology.
Mm.
A psychologist will always say, well, tell me about your childhood. They're trying to figure out how mommy and daddy screwed you up or what kinds of things happened in your life that affected you
Yeah.
adversely. Because then we're conditioned by these things. Then we go out into the world and we attract certain types of relationships that bring up our trauma,
Yeah.
or we struggle with certain things that we want to do in life that's always a problem. There's all these preordained lessons. What's different between sort of going to a therapist is that I see in the numbers the story already. I
Mm.
see this blueprint to your life. I see certain dynamics that probably played out and probably shaped the way you think and feel.
Mm.
And then I see the way forward on how to transform these lessons that were given to you so that you would grow and evolve as a soul. Because I just think at this stage, this is a little bit of a matrix that we live in. And it's like boot camp for souls.
Oof.
And again, I don't say that theoretically as far as I'm concerned. I say that because thousands and thousands and thousands of cases show this to be true,
Yeah.
verified. And what I've learned is that it's okay to have wounds and lessons, and it's our path to confront these parts of ourselves.
Mm.
And that's when we
Ooh.
grow and evolve. It's by looking, I know there's a lot of stuff in spirituality where there's a lot of positivity and I'm all for it. But we have to look at the shadow as well
Yeah. I'm
in
like,
order
I
to
don't believe
transform.
in positivity. Can I just say that? I don't believe in it
Yeah,
in the way that it's shared.
right.
I think it's bypassing. I think it's a beautiful bow on spiritual bypassing because I think even when you connect to your shadow, when you get enough space inside, you can hold space for both. You can be in joy and enthusiasm and be in grief. And, this idea of positivity that is just kind of grossly permeating the spiritual world, it turns into kind of narcissism, spiritual narcissism. It turns into a lot of avoidance, a lot of bypassing. And you miss the whole point. I love what you said about this being a boot camp for the soul. Can you say more to that?
Yeah, and by the way, what you're saying right now is one of the reasons why I agreed to come on this podcast because I've listened to your videos and I think there's an authenticity that you have that's
Mm.
sometimes missing from this spiritual world.
Thank you.
And but yeah, this boot camp for souls, what I started to see is this incredible intelligence to the universe that played out in people's lives. It was sort of remarkable as I started to work the system and started to see how it correlated with real life cases where
Mm.
people were born with certain numbers that describe certain lessons, certain challenges, and how their life kind of unfolded in a certain manner that were similar to other people with similar codes.
Mm.
I mean, there's always an X factor. There's always things that I don't know, and I'm very clear about that. I don't know everything. It's not that I can see every single activity or every event that happens in all 8 billion people's lives living on Earth, right?
You can't?
Yeah,
What?
sorry to say, but there's enough information there that makes it unmistakable. And what I found is there has to be a reason why we're here. I don't believe in the accidental. There was a bunch of molecules that blew up and that was it, and it was all just a giant mistake. I think it's
Mm.
a part of a process and intelligence, and that Einstein spoke about that. Einstein spoke
Mm.
about this intelligence in the universe, right? And my belief is, after all these years, is that the reason why we're given these lessons is that's the only way to evolve as a soul, only way to grow, only way to have that tension that brings out, that what you referred to as the transformation.
Mhm.
So I don't think it has to be. My sessions at times are filled with humor. I'm kind of an edgy person. I swear, I do crazy shit in my readings. Um, but I keep my eye on the ball, which is getting people to the higher path. And what I found, and I think one of the greatest secrets that I found after 25 years of doing this and over 20,000 sessions, is that the numbers that describe our wounds are the same numbers that describe our higher purpose for being here.
Wow. 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 Wow.
And I didn't know that at first. It took years of research. So there are numbers in a chart that describe natural ability. I call it your natural ability number, talents that come easy, what drives you in life, your inner motivation,
Mm.
personality traits. And they're important. And to do a full chart, you need to do all those numbers. I get about 5 or 6 numbers depending on the name and the birth date. But what's interesting is, what I found out later is that what I call the ultimate goal numbers, describe how you were not supported growing up, describe
Mm.
how you were repressed or there was conflicts in that area, and it represents almost a disowned aspect of who we are.
Yeah.
Then we go out into the world and we
Wow.
attract these Shakespearean dramas with other people,
Listen.
right? And it's really
Yes, we
remarkable
do.
how this works. And for example, I can sit down with the chart and I can tell someone, you've attracted these kinds of people. And I do this whole like FBI profile of who this person is.
Yeah.
And they're like, how would you possibly know that? And because I projected your chart onto someone else, I created a person who would mirror back to you your own wounds,
Mm.
because that's what we attract
To
until
let
we
you
heal
know the
enough.
work. Wow.
And again, I don't say this as, oh, this happened a couple of times.
Yeah.
This happened tens of thousands of times.
I mean, just that number alone, that's astounding. Like, that's 20,000. What? Okay. There are so many questions. First, I want to go back,
Mhm.
because I think I'm always, and we're in an age where we're now kind of having conversations like this so easily, so much more openly. There's infographics all over IG and everywhere about things that you used to have to whisper about, or
Mhm.
create language around to not seem quote unquote crazy to people. How did you, to get to a point where you have just amassed such a body of work and expertise, how did you even say yes to this? Because my assumption is you started in a time that is not this current one where you can just go on TikTok and get the Astro tea. How did you come to this work, and how did you know it was your purpose?
You're right. And I didn't, because I did not spend a lot of my time doing social media. In fact, I kind of rejected social media for most of my career. Part of it because I thought, why do I need this? I've been doing this for so long and I have a clientele. And I also saw some things that I thought were inauthentic. And that,
Yeah.
but I've changed now because I've come to terms with the reality of life, that this is life,
Yeah.
right? But when I started out, you're right. It was not, health and wellness was not a trend.
Mhm.
Spirituality, could be considered a little off the wall to some.
Mhm.
Um, I What happened was that I had an insatiable curiosity to understand life.
Mm.
And although ironically the family I grew up in, right? Because I was actually adopted, and my parents were quite old when they adopted me. And my mother was a German Jew whose family escaped from Nazi Germany in the mid to late 1930s.
Wow.
And she was a very sophisticated, rather elegant intellectual of some sort, if you will. She was a senior professor at UCLA.
Mm.
It's interesting, my mother's maiden name was Einstein.
Hmm.
And nobody knew if she was actually related to Albert Einstein. I actually found on the internet years ago the family tree that she indeed is a descendant of Albert Einstein.
My goodness.
She kept her maiden name, so in her work. So my mother was known as Professor Einstein.
Wow.
You like to come home with your report card to Professor Einstein,
Yeah.
get a B or like a
No pressure.
right. So But so it was a perfect storm. I think instinctively, I think biologically, because my birth parents were musicians in the '60s. Dad was a
Mm.
little bit of a rock star. Had a couple hit songs. I didn't even know who he was until I was 19.
Wow.
And I think I had this creative, intuitive uh, essence to my being that was inconsistent with the intellectuals and the skepticism I grew up with. However, I found a way to bring them together in this
Hmm.
perfect melding of mathematics and systematic thinking with spirituality. And it started through studying Kabbalah because I grew up in a Jewish family. And Kabbalah is Jewish mysticism.
Mhm.
And when you really study it properly, you find that there is a system of numbers that are tied to the Hebrew letters that go, and it's referred to as gematria. Gematria is the connection between numbers and letters, and then formulating
Mm.
basically words that add up to certain numbers that have deeper meaning. So I was really fascinated with that because it was that mathematical analytical thing tied to mysticism.
Yeah.
But it wasn't long till I started studying other things. I found a book back in the day called The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly Palmer Hall that was like an encyclopedia of mystical knowledge that spanned all over the world. And I was absolutely blown away from that. And then it started a journey of studying all of these spiritual traditions. And what I found was startling to me
Mm.
that every single major world religion and spiritual tradition had a system of a philosophy using numbers as the language.
Wow.
Every one. And I thought, is this common knowledge? Do we know this? Are we taught this in school? Again, this is a scholarly fact. I can
Mhm.
sit down with anyone, in comparative religion and speak about this, or a theologian. And what's so interesting about this is that it's not really readily taught. For example, when you go to school, you learn the Pythagorean theorem in math class.
Yeah.
So Pythagoras is considered by many to be the godfather of numerology.
Really?
But do we learn that that same person who lived 2,500 years ago believed that there was a world where numbers were considered divine,
Yeah. Wow.
that numbers were the key to the universe, that numbers could describe the essence of all things, that all things vibrated to a number? We're not taught that in school, but yet we learn a squared plus b squared equals c squared. But the same man had all these divine, this incredible knowledge.
Mm.
And I find it interesting that we're not really taught that.
Yes.
It doesn't play into, the regular typical curriculum.
That what you're saying, I mean, God, if this is not a symptom of the way we human and that we just want to forget things all the time and then have to refine things and then take the sacredness away from things. But I had an experience myself where it was in beginning to research and study the books of Enoch that
Yeah.
I was just like, "Wait, wow. Oh, and they wanted to keep this away from the Bible, but this gives us systems for understanding why we're here and connecting with the creator, but they're apart, but somehow and then this book vilifies all of that, but this book tells you to go for it." And like
See, now you're getting into something. Why is it that, and I'm not, this is not some grand conspiracy at all. It's just that mankind, right?
Yeah.
The there is a tendency towards materialism over time. There's a spiritual
Mm.
movement, and then it becomes people gain control of that spiritual movement, end up because human beings were human, and we want to codify it, we want to put it into a system, and then we want to control it,
Yeah.
and then the spiritual essence to it gets taken out. That's why I really feel like s- war over religion is so inconsistent with
Mm.
spirituality because it at the basis of all great truths is a same great truth,
Hmm.
right? And you can study all the world religions, but there's always a mystical path that delves deeper into it, right? In Islam, you have Sufism, you have Christian mysticism, you have Kabbalah for Jews.
Mm.
They don't diverge as much as people think. It really is a deeper body of knowledge, And that's why I'm saying this language of numbers I kept seeing pop up in spiritual writings, hidden in their writings,
Yeah.
was so similar across the world.
You know, it's so interesting. I mean, everything that you're saying, but one of the things specifically when you're speaking of there's always a belief, and then there's kind of more of a surface, mainstream, generalized way to interact with said belief. And then there is always a secret mystical path of interacting. And what I'm seeing as the difference in each is one of them gives you direct access to creator and really activates you as a creator. And so some of the traditions that are done in like Sufism and Kabbalah and more of the mystical side of belief, it's an in-body experience. A
That's right.
lot of those beliefs require your participation in ritual, in devotional practice. You're using your mind, your emotions, your physical body, and your spiritual soul. And those aren't activated in the other layer of belief in the way that a more generalized population is able to kind of interact with it.
That's correct. It's called the mystery teachings. And they've been around for thousands of years, and they've hidden their knowledge in certain writings and allegory and symbols.
Yeah.
And it was Carl Jung, the great, 19th century godfather of psychoanalysis,
Yes.
but he also was a mystic in his own right. He used the term archetypes,
Mm.
or symbols or images or pictures that have been a part of the human consciousness for thousands of years. And he believed that numbers were one of the prime archetypes or symbols of the universe, of how all things connect together. And he said something to the effect that man did not invent numbers, they
Mm.
discovered what already existed.
Mm.
And I believe, after all, and I've studied so many things, God knows, over the last, don't want to say, well, we already know 25 years, I already dated myself, but over these last gazillion years I've been doing this, I studied everything I could get my hands on. I really wanted to know what was out there. And I did it because truth is so important to me.
Mm.
And I devoted my life to understanding this craft to help people because, and you said it, and I think it was really profound what you said earlier about that this mystical knowledge that the ancients had developed and understood was probably given to them by the divine. And that what I've done is I've said, okay, I'm going to do my best to understand this knowledge and devote myself to understanding this craft. And then I'm going to translate that in a way that the average person can use in their life. I'm going to speak to people and connect to people in a way that they can relate to. I'm going
Mhm.
to learn how this system applies to all the modern life stuff that we go through. Everything that you and I and everyone, watching this we live in this modern world, and there's a lot of unique lessons and issues that we go through. And everything's very confusing and crazy right now in the world, right? This is really
Yes.
timely for people
Yeah.
to this and other things that they can get their hands on, that this is such a great tool to help you to understand and navigate, as you called, life, because it is a matrix, and it is a lesson for us to be here. And once we
Mm.
understand what that is, we choose differently. We become conscious.
And the power is in choice always. Choice is creation. Ah.
What I've discovered is, particularly these lesson numbers, that we unconsciously are programmed. We carry this program in us. It is an algorithm. And then we go out into the world, and we're hardwired to attract certain dynamics. And so that's why certain types of relationships, why am I attracted to this person?
Mhm.
This person maybe not be right for me. This might be toxic. Why did I stay in this relationship for this long? Why did I stay in that dead end job for so many years when I was unfulfilled? Why is it that I don't go for what I really want? Where's this fear coming from? Right? Why do certain types of things happen to me when I get to a certain point?
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it it's written in this storyline. Once you understand what the pattern is
Yes.
and where
Ooh,
it stemmed
ooh,
from,
ooh.
the unconscious becomes conscious, and then you become the numbers are not just attracting things in your life, you become the numbers, and you then are able to choose the numbers and metamorphosize and transform the numbers into their higher level. You become conscious of the universe that you've created around yourself, and then you have the right to choose and change and modify, because free will is everything.
Phew, and co-create. Woo!
And then you become the co-creator with the universe. The numbers
You're
come.
just speaking my language so
The
deep.
numbers come down, right? Like in the Matrix.
Yes.
And now suddenly you're dodging bullets.
Yeah.
You're flying.
All the codes.
Yeah, allegorically, of course. But yeah, all the codes come down, and you understand why.
Yeah.
And once you understand why, it's no longer this hidden secret to your life. And it can be a major eye opener.
God, to say the least. To say the least, like, God, just everything that you just said. Yes, 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 yes. I believe wholeheartedly. I live wholeheartedly. And it just changes everything. It feels, you come into your power in so many different ways. And it makes this experience, everything that you've just expressed, I found in my life, it makes this experience of being alive, which is guaranteed to be challenging. There will never be an experience here without challenge. But it gives you the way to kind of make what can be a Greek tragedy a comedy too. It can be fun too. It can be, you just come into acceptance that it literally is what it is. And so how can you play with that? How can you make art with that? How can you create with that? Okay, Josh, I would love, I know you know my life path number.
I do know.
And we have the same life path number.
We do, to the double digit.
Can you share with me?
I'll think about it.
Oh, come on. Tell me the things.
So yeah, before I came here, I received your birth date, and I calculated your life path number. Now, I want to make this abundantly clear that there are 5 to 6 numbers in a chart that trying to decode a person with one number, even the life path number, is really not how the full process works. There's so much information that I don't have, but I can give you some general things about your life path number, and I happen to know it well because it's mine.
Yes. Oh, yes. And now I know I'm gonna get like the gooey best of this because I know you've been studying yourself your whole life.
Yeah.
Lay it on me.
So it's I don't think it's going to be a shock to you that that your life path number, now the proper breaking down of a life path number is not a single digit number. So
Okay.
sometimes you see online or
Yeah, they say get it down to just one number.
so that's incorrect.
Okay.
So there are double digits that were added down. Now, being able to add down in the proper way is the proper formula. These are something that I had to work out, 10,000 years ago when I started this. Right?
Yeah.
So your proper life path number is a 4711. Now, traditionally, and there's some things, and what I said, the old school numerologists from back in the day that I moved on from, and other things that I keep the tradition. Traditionally, when you have an 11 in the chart, we don't add that down to the 2 because we know we can add down 1 and 1 make 2. So 47 is just 4 plus 7 is an 11, right? And of course, we could add down the 1 and 1 to 2, but that misses the point. I keep the tradition of the 11 because it is considered a master number in numerology, right? Now, look, back in the day, these books were very hyperbolic and they exaggerated things. And so it seemed like, if you had an 11, you were the chosen one and you walked on water and you were able to raise people from the dead and things of this sort.
Oh,
well,
okay.
if you can, let me know. I'd like to see it.
I need to do some studying then.
Yeah.
Let me.
So being a little facetious there, but yeah, they talked really sort of this dramatic language back, but people have 11s. However, it's not going to be shocking to you that 11 is sort of this number associated with people who are on a path of higher consciousness and that are considered messengers to the world, right? Now, in the modern world, right, how do you get a message out? How do you shift people's consciousness? Well, you'd have to use some sort of media channel for that, right? So you were in the media. However, one can be in the media and not be involved in higher consciousness,
Oh, yeah.
to say the least, right?
I'm like, that's why I left media, but yeah.
Right. So I don't know the rest of your chart, but I can tell you that part of your purpose in life was to elevate people's minds and shift people's consciousness. Now, what's interesting is that when you're an 11 and you're growing up, you don't understand that at first, and you feel like a little bit of a stranger in a strange land.
Yeah.
So you're not going to fit in.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can be a little wounding because we're not like others.
So wounding.
And it is interesting to note that an 11 can be read as a double one, and one can be a number of dynamic leadership, but you can add that down to a 2. We know the 2 is there, and 2 can second guess things. And so until we learn to be fit vessels for these channeling of these inspirational ideas and these concepts, these things are coming to us, we're going to have highs and lows. We're at times we're going to feel like we're destined for things, and other times we're going to second guess, why am I here? And you're going to have a little bit more of that, up and down until we find that balance and we realize, okay, there is a purpose for us. Now, the 4 and the 7 aspect of it is interesting because 4 is the foundation of your life, right? You're sitting on 4 legs of a chair, right? And when we grow up, our stability and our foundation is very important, that we feel grounded. 7 is a mysterious number. It does rule spirituality, but at first, it usually challenges us in a trust faction, okay? So whenever 4 and 7 is together, there usually was some sort of perception or some sort of experience if there was some sort of trust or betrayal in the family environment, okay? Now, what that was, I don't know because I don't have the rest of your chart, but 47-11s at first may look to try to feed that wound outside of themselves until they come to realize that the only way to heal that wound is through finding a deeper purpose in our lives.
Ooh-wee. Yeah.
Because we can try to fill the void.
Absolutely. And
We
get
can
lost in the
we can
void.
get lost in escapism and things like
Yeah.
this. Sometimes 47-11 can bring a bit of escapist because I think the number initially doesn't like the pain. It doesn't want, and is looking for something else.
Yeah.
But eventually they come to learn that a deeper path, and that's the 7, which is spirituality or deeper truth, can help them build the foundation, right? And then they can develop trust in the process, right? But before they get there, 47-11s are definitely very imaginative and creative, and they have a little bit of magic to them. They have to be careful that when they, earlier relationships, that they don't project this imagination and these ideals onto others in an illusory way where they set themselves up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
the end result of that can be a sense of the trust being broken because you didn't see them clearly. You sort of projected on these ideas onto them.
Yeah. And the idealistic view of that, because I think my escapism was fixing other people, quote unquote, right? Because you can't really do that. But it was like the some of the self-righteousness of finding solutions and being a fixer and saving, someone, saving others. And that's not the path. And yeah.
Well, again, that might, if I had the rest of your numbers, we'd be able to delve into that. But usually there's certain numbers that are associated with call that performing for love or helping others. But remember, until we find our higher path, we have a tendency to take our path numbers and utilize them on a personal dysfunctional level, right?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
you're here to elevate and awaken people, but back then you were doing that on a personal level. And of course, when you take that higher path and you put it in the personal in a dysfunctional manner, what's going to happen is that it's going to lead to disappointment.
Absolutely. And it's all ego, and it's transcending, that for how you're actually built to share. I'm sorry,
Well, that's interesting you say ego because when you have a double 1, there is a strong sense of dynamic self that has to come through in what you do. But it's important to understand that you're here as a messenger, you're a conduit. That's why 11s have these insights and revelations in life, and there's always a little bit of a nervous energy because there's all these creative ideas and downloads happening for an 11.
Yeah.
It can happen when you're walking down the street.
It's a lot,
It's a lot.
Josh. It's a lot.
Oh no,
I feel like I have to have a separate workout routine.
Yeah.
Literally and not, but to just support the amount of thinking I do.
So another thing is that 4 is an analytical number, and a 7 is a thirst for knowledge, and combined with the 11, that can bring an active mind, you know.
Yeah.
But with those double ones, confidence and leadership, right? But the 2 is assistance, help, and support. And there's this polarity there. And I think the pathway is not to over identify with yourself, right? To identify with the message that's coming through,
Mhm.
right? And once you do that, you can go out and be a dynamic figure without making it about you.
Yeah.
And that's always important for an 11, right? It's you're a conduit. You're here to bring this message to other people. And look at what I do. I'm a 4711. I'm an effing numerologist, which is so weird for my family. I've even after all these years, I'm like, God, that's so weird. But it is what it is. Because 11s are interested in alternative things, unique concepts, things that are off the beaten path, self-help, this kind of thing. It depends on the chart. I've seen numbers where 11 can associate with futuristic technology if the rest of the numbers support that, right? So, but you're obviously in a line of work that is totally consistent with your life path. I can feel confident about that, right? And some of the things that you've experienced early in your life, you probably did play out some of the escapism and the,
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know,
absolutely.
and you probably may have replayed some of the trust stuff,
Oh, yes.
and and that's okay. See, it's okay
Yeah.
to do what your numbers say you're going to do.
Yeah.
It's okay. I give people permission to have these lessons and play things out.
I love how you're saying this piece, especially because, the part that it's just not true for anyone is that there will be a life without challenge. And I think so many run around trying to find all these balms and salves to stop pain or to stop challenge in their life. And it will never work because we are here for both. We're here for the full spectrum of human experience. We're here for both polarities, light, dark, the blend of the in between. And so, this tool, the way that you're expressing this deeper knowledge, it's so beautiful to find out what your wounding is. It doesn't have to be embarrassment. It doesn't have to
No.
be, oh, yeah, and then I found myself in this situation because of the original pain. And it's kind of, it's more, it can be more felt as, wow, that was the wound. Oh, and that's why I made that choice. And that's how I was in this circumstance. Of course. And then you come into an acceptance, you come into neutrality. This
Right.
alleviates judgment. You cannot create with judgment. We are here to create.
You were doing exactly what you were supposed to do.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful.
You were doing
Can
exactly what you were supposed to
everyone
do.
listening sit in what Josh just said? When you think about some of the moments that have shame to them, some of the moments that have againstness of self to them, some of the unforgiven experiences in your life and the way you view yourself, there is opportunity to create some space. And this may take a little practice, and that is fine. We have time to be able to say, I was doing exactly what I was supposed to be doing in that moment. That wounding, that experience that I still cringe about or that I feel horrified about, it might take some releasing and configuring, but when you settle into a space of saying, I was doing exactly what I signed up to do with who I signed up to do it with, that leads to freedom. That leads to liberation every single time. And there is a walk to the liberation. But if you stay in practice with it and you just stay present and bear witness to it all, there is freedom.
Not only what you say, I find to be true, borne out by thousands of sessions, but it's that road that will lead you to your higher path.
Mm,
There's
mm,
a payoff for that. See,
mm,
once you
mm.
understand why it was that this whole, Shakespearean drama took place, however wounding it was, or how traumatizing it was, or however embarrassing or cringeworthy or whatever it might have been, um, it it was because of a program in you,
Mm.
a distortion in your field of thinking, a part of your earlier childhood wounding patterns, formative stages of development, whatever you want to call them. You're just reenacting your program. And but the program was already given to you at birth. So it is meant to happen. I've had clients come to me. I had a client come to me and she had a history of attracting narcissists, right? By the way, when you have the number 1 and an 11 can be considered a double 1, you can attract narcissists, right? Because 1 represents the dynamic self, and we're still learning how to be our dynamic self. We're going to attract others that are overly self-oriented. But I
Yeah,
digress. But
truly.
but but I could tell her level of development. One of the things I do is I go back in time and I look at certain years. There's these numerological cycles,
Mm.
and it's not like psychic predictions. It's just that these cycles tend to accentuate certain parts of our lives. And I was able to ask targeted questions and say, did something like this happen? And, and a lot of the time we'll see the results of that, right? Something did happen like that. But they had to go through that. I could see it in the numbers. It was, so I'm saying this,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. It's a matrix. I've peered beyond the veil. I get it now. I've had too many cases where I've seen this, right? So in your life, when you go through these experiences, that's a part of the process.
Mm.
That is the normal part of the process. And this girl came to me and she had a history of narcissism with these other men that she was, and I could tell she needed to learn more about it. I actually
Mm.
suggested that this man was pursuing her, and who is a well-known narcissist. He's literally known for that. And I actually said, you know what? If you stay conscious and aware of what you're doing, I think you should engage in a relationship with him. And she looked at me, she said, but you told me I have this issue, and
Mm.
here it is again, and you're telling me to engage in
Mm.
it? And it was my belief at that time that she needed to go through that. I actually suggested she did. And I said, I'll see you in 2 years. And she said, why in 2 years? And I said, you'll see. Now, of course, I didn't know for sure. I was saying, like, statistically speaking, looking at the numbers, looking at the cycles, that there was a high likelihood of a breakup then. I didn't know for sure. And I said, I'll see you in 2, at least there would be, trouble in paradise, and she'd probably come to me anyways. So 2 years later, she came to me with another girl, and they sat down with me, and she said, I want you to introduce my new friend. This was a woman that this narcissist was also having an affair with at the same time. And they
Mm.
met each other,
Oh, wow.
and they became friends, and they both realized they got to quit this program that they've been playing out. So they both left him and they became friends, and they both came to me and said, we're now ready to talk about why we do this.
Mm. Damn. I have a question. 2-year cycles. It's so funny that you bring this up because I haven't yet got into the research about this piece, but I was speaking to a friend about it a couple days ago. I find that 2-year cycles everywhere. Like in my own life, I find it when I meet people, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to see you again for 2 years. What is this 2-year cycle?
Well, numerology, as far as the cycles work in cycles of 9 years, which is like a
Mhm.
full cycle. It's the full single digits, 1 through 9, right? When you get to the next year after a 9 year, you go back to 1 again. And there are cases where people have in their lesson numbers 2 numbers that are chronologically right after each other. So let's say you have a combination of 6 and 7, these 2 numbers in your ultimate goal lessons, which I don't see that. I can't see that right now, right?
Mhm.
Well, the way cycles work is that you're going to go from a 6-year to a 7-year in your 9-year cycle, and those 2 years are going to be very powerful for you, right? Also, when you go from a 9-year back to a 1-year, when you start an entirely new 9-year cycle, that's always a big, I call that the grand transitional cycle. It really is 2 years. It's not a
Mm.
1-year cycle, it's 2 years. The other thing is that cycles are not, they don't start on your birthday to your birthday like some numerologists believe. Um, there is a lead in prior, usually by now, and it's interesting because I did look at your cycles. I did look at them.
Talk to me.
And uh, so right about now, we actually start to pick up on next year. Cycles blend into each other. It doesn't go from January 1st to December 31st and you go out and have a bunch of champagne and have a good time and you wake up the next morning with a little bit of hangover and everything's changed in your new cycle. Usually there's a lead in and also there's a carryover, right? So right about now, I usually say around October-ish, give or take a month or two, we'll start to pick up on the next year's cycle. Now, for you, it's very important because the cycle you're going into. Now, let me tell you this. I used to go on Wikipedia and I used to pick people of fame or notoriety where I could confirm what their birth date was, and then look at their storyline of when they got their first big break, when they got their first leading role, or when they got their published their first book, or had big changes and when they got discovered. So because I could see if there's any statistical reference to when these types of things happen for people.
Wow.
Right? Now, I can tell you that when we're looking at these kind of cycles, when things tend to happen under certain cycles, it's not a 100% it always happened underneath this cycle. But I did notice that there were 3 cycles where there were bigger changes in a person's life when it came to career, that is 5, 8s, and 11s, which is a form of a 2, right? 5, 8, and it kept popping up over and over again. Okay. Now there's reasons for that. And that is that 5 is a cycle of, well, it's the breaker of the status quo. And it brings in a restless energy. And usually there are new opportunities and new possibilities because you're willing to make some moves in life, right? And because of that, sometimes it just attracts opportunities to you because you're ready for them. It's a timing thing in the universe, right? Sometimes people consciously make decisions and say, I'm ready to try out some new things. Or 5 can also rule risk and speculation. It can rule marketing, promoting of new ideas. It can rule travel and adventure. There's all these things that come with the number 5. And so it's not shocking that we'll see in certain, people's lives that bigger breaks or changes happen in a 5 cycle. You're going into a 5 cycle. You like the dramaticism?
Yes, God. What does it mean?
So what it means is that, again, I would have liked to have your full chart so I could delve deeper. But what it means is that this is the beginning of a cycle, and this is the precursor to that cycle. It's going to get stronger when you get into 24, right? But this is the time frame when you're going to be ready for some bigger things in life, bigger changes. Now, that can mean opportunities come for you to do what you do in a new way. That can mean that you might have other projects that you've been working on the side, which typically happens in the cycle you've been in, irons in different fires, and that they're ready to go, or something's ready to go. It's not that I know every little detail that's going to happen in everyone's life. Sometimes it may seem that way when I'm doing a person's chart, but I don't. What I'm telling you is that statistically speaking, usually that's the kind of thing that happens. My job isn't to know all things of every aspect of a person's life. My job is to help you understand your patterns, break those patterns, and open the door to really integrating the parts of yourself that wasn't supported, and everything sort of changes from that, right? It's you attract a different kind of person. You start to fulfill yourself in your career. You start to realize that you have the cockamamie ideas about yourself that are ridiculous, and we all have that. I mean, God knows the stuff that I grew up with. I mean, I was raised by a Vulcan. My mother was sort of Spock, and I didn't get any of that emotional stuff, so I had a lot of wounds with that. I didn't get into this work because I didn't have wounds. I didn't get into this work. I was literally taken as a child, as a newborn infant, and taken and given to another family at day one. And I think that was probably wounding for me, and at an age when I wasn't even really aware of things. So I understand why we're here, and I have a lot of empathy and sympathy for people. And my work really is to, help people find. I get it. I actually get this thing called life not because I think I'm the wisest person, because of you and you and you. I've worked with lots of other people and I've learned from their storylines and I gathered research and I made a mental note of that, right? It's your time right now in your life. It's just the way it works for you to start taking off of some of these other things. This is the launching pad right now. And it's about, whether you're ready to go for the next stage. The timing is just typically what happens underneath this cycle,
Mm, mm,
right? So we're going to remember that you're the messenger. You're going to remember that you're here to uplift others and shift people's consciousness and so on and so forth. You're going to trust in your process because you're going to do the step-by-step process in life, and you're not going to skip steps,
mm-mm,
and you're not going to live in this up here. You're going to
mm-mm.
keep it. You're going to take it from here, and you're going to bring it down, right? And you're not going to over-identify with yourself, but you're going to realize that you're here for a very special purpose, and that's a beautiful thing. And it's time for you to now make some bigger moves and changes in your life.
I'm so happy to meet you.
Yeah, feelings mutual.
So, Josh, I would love to ask if you could share with the audience listening a little soul work, something that they can integrate with, work towards embodiment until our next episode.
Okay. So I think it's a internal question. You're going to ask yourself, what is it about your hopes and dreams that drives you so much? What is it about your hopes and dreams that you're attracted to? And then ask yourself, are those aspects that you are embodying in your life now? And if you're not, why?
Josh, thank you so much for your work. Thank you for your expertise. Thank you for your mastery. Thank you for your mastery and everything that requires of the human and the soul.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I've devoted my life to this, and I think we talked about the timing, right?
Yeah.
So I've just coming out of my 11 year. I'm an 11 life path like you, and we talked about 5, 8s, and 11s. These numbers that I keep seeing over and over again in my research, and so this is why I'm here. Is that I'm writing a book on this, and I'm ready to take it out into the world and share this knowledge with people, and with a humble sense of service, and make sure I keep my integrity, and all the work that I've done. I think it's ready now to be shared. I'm happy to be here to share it with you.
Thank you. How lucky are we? How lucky are we to be on the receiving end of this work? I cannot wait to dive into more of your work, to dive into everything that you'll be creating. Wow. This was really special and amazing. And I'm just, again, I cannot understate the most attractive thing to me in life, in everyone, in everything, and in every experience is mastery. It's the commitment to the refinement and to the nuance and to getting into the crevices of a work that you're called to. And mastery is such a rare path, especially in this day and age. And this is not to take away from some of the really beautiful peer learning, teaching, and sharing that is happening all over the internet that is so important because it's grounding work. It's opening people in ways, giving them language and interpretations. But don't partially learn something that you're called to. Anyone listening, anyone that may need this kind of a message, dive in face first. And it doesn't matter if the rest of the world gets it. They'll catch up if they're supposed to. Your life is more than this exact moment. There may be a work that you build or a study that you connect to that isn't even unearthed for 200 years, but then your journal becomes sacred text. We don't know. So just do the work. Do it well. Do it with integrity. And do it with as little egoic connection to trend and to mainstream as you possibly can. Josh, how can everyone connect with you?
Yeah, I have a website, joshcode.com, CODE, because it is a code. Josh is doing it. I think it was my mom who came up with that years ago.
I love that.
God rest her soul. But people can go on book sessions on my website and book a reading.
Amazing. And we'll have all of that. If you're listening, especially on Apple, it'll be in the summary notes of this episode. Really easy will be a click-through link to Josh's Instagram and Josh's website. Highly encourage I don't know what your books look like this time of the year, but highly encourage, if you resonate, get on the website and try to get you a session and walk into this new year with with a little extra. Start early so you're starting this new year already connected to what your path is and what your path can be. Thank you, Josh.
Welcome.